Hello, everybody, and welcome to From First Shift to Field Ready, Cincinnati ECC's Tech-Powered Training Success. I'm so glad that you've joined us today. My name is Robin Gifford. I'm with Powered EMS by NeoGov, and I'll be your moderator today. I came to Powered EMS after retiring from 25 years in public service, and it's great that I still get to serve this audience. So again, thank you for being here with us today. Today, we're going to highlight one of the communication centers that I've had a chance to visit and interact with. And we're going to talk about how they took their training program from reactive to results driven using technology. So we are thrilled to have the team from Cincinnati ECC here to tell their story today. Before I get started and before we jump in, I just want to remind you that we will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation today. I encourage you to take advantage of asking our panelists any questions that come up while you're listening today. And we just, we want to hear about their experiences, the solutions, the tools that they have. So just feel free to go to that chat panel and submit your questions. Let us know if you have any issues there. Also, just want to remind you that the webinar recording, the slides, and the respective case studies that we did with Cincinnati will be available and emailed out to you tomorrow. And that way you can review those and share those with your team. Finally, just take a couple minutes at the end of the webinar, please, to fill out our post-webinar survey, and we'd love to hear your feedback and learn what you would like to hear about on future webinars. So moving into the overview here. So in public safety, training isn't just important, it's really critical. And our goal today is to show how modern tools can make training more consistent, measurable, and engaging. And so here's a quick look at where we're headed. Our guests from Cincinnati ECC here with us today want to share their firsthand experiences and stories on how they improved their training program by embracing technology. We'll start with the training and policy challenges that they faced and what they wanted to change, and then we'll walk in how did they use Power Ready to transform their onboarding and role readiness, and then how Power Recall helped them boost policy and protocol retention. Finally, we'll talk about integrations, how they're using reporting tools, and they'll even share some practical tips with you and advice on what worked well and what they might do a little differently. So let's introduce our panel. All right, so first we have Bill Vidra. Bill Vidra. He is the director of Cincinnati ECC, and I just want to thank you so much for taking out time out of your day to join us. If you could just introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about your background, and then introduce your team for us.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Bill Vidra. I'm with the City of Cincinnati and the director of our Emergency Communication Center, which is a standalone agency within city government. I've been with ECC since 2018, and my career overall is primarily in public safety, 911 and related technology, and a bit of law enforcement and fire EMS in my background as well. And I will turn it over to Clark Miller.
Thanks, Bill. Like he said, my name is Clark Miller. I'm the quality manager here at Cincinnati's Emergency Communication Center. I've been here for almost 2 years, but prior to that, I spent a decade working for the Ohio State Highway Patrol in Columbus, first as a dispatcher and then an administrative role. And my job primarily focuses on how to increase overall compliance with the protocols we use for processing calls, and then how to better get out updated training information as things develop. And with that, I'll hand it off to Dana Kreutzinger, our training manager.
Hi, I'm Dana Kreutzinger. I am the training manager for Cincinnati. I have been with the agency for 11.5 years. I started as a call taker, moved up to dispatch, and then worked as a supervisor before transitioning into my role as training manager. I have used that experience of training in all those different positions to be able to really help fine-tune how we run our training program and to help us build and continue to grow as a program.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so happy to have all of you here with us today. So moving on, we want to just talk a little bit about what Cincinnati ECC is all about. So just to set the stage, you are a large, high-volume communications center and you serve a diverse population. And I had the pleasure to visit your ECC recently, and I was really impressed with the professionalism and the operations that you have going on there. So Bill, could you give us just a little brief summary about your organization and what you do there at ECC?
Sure. So as an organization, we've been around since 1931. We've had a lot of different names in that time because that obviously long predates 911. But as the point within city government where people can reach out for help and that help be sent, that mission has evolved and changed over time. And we, up until recent years, were the city's 911 center and dispatch center. Our mission expanded significantly a few years ago as we took on and put on the hat of a 311 center as well, and jokingly say from potholes to bank robberies, whatever a citizen needs to report or needs city services to handle, we are that point of connection for them. So we have about 160 people spread across those roles, people in 311 and 911 and dispatching roles. And as an agency, we also manage some alternative response programs within the city. So crisis teams, community responder teams that are part of our department, and a little kind of a new flavor for us as well, having employees out in the field, as we would say. So a lot of telephone calls coming in and out of our center. We had a really critical incident in Cincinnati in 2018 that was the catalyst for reviewing how emergency communications works. It brought a lot of attention to public safety, and that's what kicked off a restructuring of our organization. There were a lot of legacy systems, legacy processes, a lot of things that happened on paper within our organization, and many other things to tackle. We've been on a journey of continuous improvement since then, and have adopted a number of tools like the ones that we're going to talk about today to help us be the best communication center that we can be.
Thank you so much for that background. I think people in this audience today will be able to relate to a lot of the things that we're going to talk about, because one of the things in public safety, you have to have training that is flexible, scalable, and it has to be really impactful. And so that's kind of what led to this transformation that we're going to talk about today. So you guys started your journey with Power Ready back in 2021, and you were focused on streamlining your training and improving accountability. And then by 2024, you were early adopters of Power Recall, which is something you helped us beta test just to reinforce those key policies in a flexible format. And so together, those tools gave you the ability to improve both your onboarding program and ongoing learning. So I want to dive into how Power Ready impacted what you were doing. So I'd really like it if you could kick off and talk about reviewing the challenges that you were facing with training overall and how you're able to leverage tech to improve your field training so that you had timely feedback. And actually, let me talk about this. So we were going to go to Power Ready first. I just realized we're doing training challenges, so we're going to cover actually both here. So we're going to cover both Power Ready and Recall, and what challenges you were facing before we get into Power Ready. So my apologies there. So let's move into what needed to change. So if we go to that next slide, can you talk about some of the challenges that you were facing, like with new hires and getting people ready for their role? And then we'll switch over to the policy side.
Yeah, at a high level, I can kick us off there. We have a large staff and a lot of different job functions, as I talked about, and to speak more on Dana's part of our organization versus Clark's, which are working hand in hand. Dana, as our training manager, and her team are focused on new hire training, promotional training, what we're doing with folks in the classroom, what we're doing in on-the-job training. And Clark's team, as our quality manager, and the team beneath him, is not just focused on quality assurance, but what we call quality improvement as well, kind of a continuous cycle of measuring how we're doing, identifying gaps, and then applying various interventions, different types of continuing education, so that ongoing training where we're tuning performance is happening with his team, and we're working both hand in hand to make all that happen. So we had a number of needs in both of those areas. Challenges on the side that Dana will talk about with our daily observation reports, or DORs, the type of documentation that our trainers are doing with those folks who are new in a role. And we didn't really have a system that was working for us, that was flexible enough to adapt to the needs, the changing needs of our organization, and to be easy to use for our trainers, our training officers. On the continuing education side, we'll get into more later about things we've done with Power Recall, but there's always the challenge of how hard it is to create continuing education content, and just getting that out the door and managing it is a challenge that we wanted to address.
Most definitely. And I think our audience would probably agree that these challenges aren't unique to an ECC. This is something across public safety that we see. Dana, I'd be curious, do you have any thoughts on things that were challenging for you in that onboarding side of getting people ready for the floor?
I think, we focus a lot on that feedback and helping our trainees grow, from day one to when they're released to work independently. There's so much knowledge that they have to absorb. And without the ability to give them very specific, immediate feedback, we're kind of failing them on our piece of the puzzle. So, the product that we used prior didn't have really the ability for us to track those trends and fine tune the feedback that we were giving. It was kind of a clunkier DOR system. And so we weren't able to really give them the tools that they needed to grow from any shortcomings that they had as trainees. So we were looking for something that would kind of bridge that gap for us and help us do better as a training program to set our trainees up for success.
That certainly makes sense. Clark, what about on your side about policy training challenges and getting those protocols memorized, if you will, and people understanding that? What challenges did you face in your role with that?
I think in general, just some of the challenges we faced were more about just the amount of time that it often took to take a document and create some sort of training out of it. And also with that, sometimes you get a repetitiveness to how the information is being presented, that there was an opportunity there for sure to have a different delivery system that's still going to be effective, but also going to be probably a little more engaging than what we're used to, and kind of breaks up the monotony.
Awesome. All right, now switching gears, we're going to move into Power Ready and talk about what the impact was on your team once you implemented it. So Power Ready, for those that don't know on the call, is our field training system, and it's how you can document and manage that whole training program as you put somebody out into a field training situation. And I think everybody does that a little bit differently, but the bottom line is you got to track that information and make sure that everybody's ready for that role to be released on their own. So you guys added Power Ready in 2021. And I would love on this next slide, if you can talk a little bit about kind of what goals you hope to achieve with the tech and kind of what was your decision-making process. And I think, Bill, maybe you could speak to this the most probably.
Sure. So we started using what's known as Power Policy today, Power DMS back then in 2019, and that became the foundation for the products that we're talking about today, where we saw an opportunity to expand an ecosystem that we were familiar with and not work in silos. So going from having Power DMS for our policy and general training, online training, delivery, and tracking, when we were looking for a DOR solution for our training officers, we adopted Power Ready in 2021. And what we were excited to achieve there was just better record keeping overall. It's very important for us that our decisions are defensible, whether that's a decision to release someone to work independently or a decision to end their probationary period, and everything in between. We need that defensible record. We also need our trainees to be able to see that feedback for nothing to be a surprise to them as they move through that process, that we're not making those decisions in a vacuum. They know exactly where they stand with us. And at a leadership level, it was important for us to have what I'd call a single pane of glass, where we could see from a reporting perspective, a dashboard perspective, where are we at with this trainee, with this training class, and as an agency.
Awesome. I think everybody in the audience can definitely identify with why you needed this system or why you needed some methodology for that purpose. So next, I want to go into maybe some more specific improvements and changes that you experienced once you implemented the system. And the first thing that we'll talk about, I'm sorry, I got off on my slides here. 1 second. Is looking at what this did for you, what it gave you. So I don't know if Dana, you want to speak to this, or Bill, you have something you want to start with.
At a high level, I think having a system that's connected to our CAD has really been helpful, and connected to that ecosystem of products. But I'll let Dana dive into the nitty-gritty.
Yeah. I think for us, like I said before, we really want to focus on giving that immediate feedback. So being able to have our CTOs, our training people doing DORs as the day goes on and grading every single call that comes in gives us a leg up, and we're able to give immediate feedback for how they're doing. If you see someone struggling with a specific type of call, you're able to address it right away in that moment. So it's fresh in their mind. They remember what they're doing. And you can see that improvement on the very next call because they're able to immediately implement those changes. So it helps not only on that side, but also for our CTOs, because at the end of the day, we were running into where people are like, okay, now I've got to write down everything, or I've got to recap the whole day at the end. And now it's done. They've got all of the documentation done throughout the day because they're doing it in real time. And that really helped us to streamline that process of them creating those DORs. As a manager, I'm able to view those DORs even as they're doing them. So if I hear things, I hear them having conversations or giving the same feedback over and over again, I can even go in and look at that DOR before it's completed and submitted. So it really helps for us as supervisors and managers to keep a finger on the pulse of how our trainees are doing as well. So it was really amazing that we're able to do that in those moments. Kind of waiting weeks until you're weeks in with a trainee and then trying to go back and look at things is a lot more difficult than being able to address it right up front with them.
Yeah, that's really amazing. And do you have a specific example or anything you can talk about on the results side of the house as far as what did people think of the system? How was it embraced? Anything like that?
We work in an industry of alphas who like things the way they like things. So any change can be difficult. But once they were able to get their hands on it and experience doing it, they saw the ease with which we can do it. I think that they also really like how easy it is to change things. So if the CTOs are seeing something that we're missing or something that's not in there, and they're able to give us that feedback, we're able to make those changes right away. So they're not stuck in a system that is too cookie cutter and not built for what we need. We're able to really customize how we're using it and the feedback that we're able to give to our trainees. So I think that once they were able to kind of get over the shock of a change, they were able to really embrace it and truly enjoy it. And it is such a user-friendly system that it was hard to dislike it once we were able to get them in there.
Great. Well, that's great news. Anybody else have anything to add before we move on and talk a little more about Power Recall?
I would just say the fact that our training officers have been so happy with the improvements that the software has afforded them and making their job easier is exciting. It's a high bar to make our training officers happy sometimes, rightfully so. And we did. If if I had gone to them while our previous system was in place and told them, we're going to start doing our DORs live as the call unfolds versus the way that we did it then at the end of the shift, it was kind of a heavy lift. They would have looked at me like I was insane just because of the cumbersome nature of what documentation meant for training officers before. And it took seeing it to believe it, and it took having that CAD integration, which eliminated some of the data, duplicating data entry, getting rid of that, to realize that, yeah, I can sit there with a tablet or a laptop and be listening in on this call and documenting as we go. And there isn't an enormous amount of paperwork for me to do at the end of the shift because we've already done it and we've delivered that feedback in a much more timely way, even during the shift.
Yeah, I think back to my time as a trainee, one of the things was at that end of shift, it was adding overtime. You know, all the FTOs and the trainees were getting overtime at the end of shift, was just prolonging an already stressful thing. So, you know, having that ability to fill that out on the fly as you go throughout the day, one, you're getting that feedback right away, like you said. You're not missing something that you forgot that was earlier in the shift, which that CAD integration also helps with that. But then, you know, there's the propensity there to save on overtime costs as well, which I think will probably really be big for the audience here. I know public safety, that's one of the biggies, right? All the overtime costs that come in. So, okay, well, let's shift over then to Power Recall. So you got that implemented. You came on board as a beta tester in 2024. And for our audience that doesn't know what Power Recall is, in a nutshell, this is our science-backed microlearning software. It's kind of like providing digital flashcards for your team. And the other feature it has is it leverages AI to help you quickly build training content and then send that out. And then using a built-in algorithm, it develops a customized learning path for each employee. And it's based on, again, science called spaced repetition. So a lot of words there and everything. But Bill, tell us about why you chose to consider being part of our beta tester program. And what were those outcomes or goals that you were expecting or what you had in mind?
Yeah, late in 2024, it was a leap of faith to join in on a product that wasn't fully baked yet, but it was a really exciting opportunity for us to hear what the plan was and how it lined up with the challenges that we faced in terms of the difficulty in creating continuing education content and staying on top of delivering continuing education. You know, we know that we need to, everyone learns differently. You need to meet people where they are. And it might take a lot of different ways for us to get where we need to be in terms of addressing a performance gap across our agency or at an individualized level. So we're always looking for new things that we can do, but anytime we add a new thing, it's more work for trainers, for administrators, for the people doing that training. So we want to be intentional about what direction we go when we add new things. And we heard from the team that this system would make it far easier for us to create content, and that was exciting. That it would adapt automatically based on what people needed, how they were doing, without us having to do a lot of manual effort to make that happen, which was exciting. And from that ease of creation perspective in general, I know for me, if I'm going to write a report, if I have 10 pages to write, the hardest sentence to write is the first one. It's hard to get started. And so hearing that the system could leverage AI to suggest questions about a policy or suggest flashcards essentially about the content that we had to feed it or in our Power DMS library could get us over that writer's block hump. And we could take it and edit it and make it more specifically what we needed to be if that was the case. But it was really a game changer of an idea to accelerate that process.
Awesome. So moving on, I want to talk a little bit about what you saw after you implemented Power Recall with your team. You know, kind of what are those actions you took to kind of roll it out? And then what did you see as a result? And, you know, Bill, feel free to get us started, but I'd love for Clark to chime in as well and give us, you know, kind of his side from the quality side, what he saw with that rollout.
Yeah, we initially beta tested with a small group within our agency. It went very well, and then we rolled it out to the entire agency, and it's exceeded our expectations in both the reception from staff and the gains that we've seen. So I'll let Clark dive into it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think generally we were pretty well blown away with the amount of engagement from a user level, but also as the group. It was very apparent early on that the staff really saw this as an exciting way to kind of test their mettle, so to speak, in terms of their knowledge about a myriad of subjects. But also, I think on our quality improvement and quality assurance side, we were very impressed with the ease with which we were able to create information and get it sent out there. And also that it isn't just something that has to be kind of used in a routine way. Yes, we set a threshold of like 20 cards per week, but we've also integrated it into multiple different aspects of quality assurance and quality improvement, including improvement plans or targeted review. So it's something that staff not only has really enjoyed, but also has proved to us as an effective way to communicate either new information or information that we're trying to get by an annual basis, whether it's something about, you know, seasonal type of calls you might take for stuff on the water during the summer or things having to do with winter weather. So it's been very impressive in the way that it's been able to kind of reach many different levels of the staff in a very positive way. And as it's noted on the screen, you know, we had multiple users with multiple thousand cards completed. And with those, a lot of them have very, very high compliance rates, hovering around or above 90%. So I think it just speaks to kind of the commitment our employees have towards doing their best at all times and everything, including Power Recall.
Yeah, you know, I got to talk to one of your dispatchers, and she shared a story with me that she had just taken a recall card, and right after she took that, she took a call about that same thing. And she said, I had the confidence right after taking that to know what the answer was. She said, I already knew how to handle it because I had just taken the training. And she said, you know, we were hesitant at first, you know, thinking about something new added on we have to do. She said, but it's really fun. And she said, we saw right away that what they're building is actually helping us. It's not this generic overarching, you know, training. She said it really gets into kind of into the weeds with them of what they need to know. So that was really cool, you know, to hear from her about that. Bill, you have a story that you shared with me about being in a meeting and identifying an issue. Can you talk about what you did then with Recall in that meeting?
Yeah, sitting around the table of a management team meeting, discussing amongst leadership the issues of the day. We're always tackling some new challenge that has come up through call taking or dispatching. And when we identify something that isn't going quite right broadly, that, you know, there's this part of a procedure that clearly not everyone remembers and we're not being consistent about it, we have to decide, what are we going to do? What intervention are we going to put in place? All of which tend to be very time consuming. And now in this case, it was a particular part of an SOP that we just knew there wasn't enough awareness about that. As we talked about it in the meeting, I was able to launch Power Recall, highlight that section of the policy, generate some flashcards, and kind of slip it into the stream of content that our staff are getting. And before that conversation was done, it's like my action item was crossed off. There wasn't giving Clark work to do or his team. We weren't putting a bulletin together, tracking who has seen that bulletin. It's just like bite-sized things come up, and we can very quickly kind of slip that into the cards that our staff are receiving and know that that's going to be an ongoing thing. it's one thing to do a refresher in kind of our traditional way, but you know that you get kind of unfresh pretty quickly from that point on, and how often are you going to repeat it? This is that ongoing way to stay fresh and keep that recall rate high, is looking for things that staff don't encounter very often, getting it into that deck of cards, and they're going to continue to receive those over time and stay fresh.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that story. Dana, do you want to share anything from the training perspective of how recall has impacted what you're doing and what your trainees think of it?
It has been a phenomenal way for us to kind of have an extension of the classroom training that builds into OJT when they do their on-the-job training. It's wonderful to watch while they're, still kind of learning and trying to absorb everything, that they are doing their recall cards. And oftentimes it is trainees who are at the top of the leaderboard of who's taken the most, and you're watching them learn, you're watching them grow, you're watching them experience this new way to learn it kind of at their own pace. And then you're watching their DOR numbers reflecting that as well. So it's been a great way for us to say, we talked about this SOP week 1 of your 6 weeks classroom, but here you are 10 weeks in and you got a recall card for it. And maybe it was hard to remember, but now you've got that refresher. So now it's fresh in your mind. So it has been a phenomenal way for them to stay sharp with some of those things that, when we're having them drink from a fire hose in classroom, these are the things that they need that continuing practice with. And so that has been a phenomenal thing for our trainees.
Awesome. Is there anything else any of you want to share about recall before we move on and talk about kind of the integrations and analytics side of it?
I think I would say to agencies tuning in, how often are you rolling out training content that everyone is excited to take? And that wasn't really fully expecting it, but it makes sense when thinking about the concept of gamification of learning. Our staff have not looked at this as a chore broadly. They have embraced it and almost went a little wild with the amount of cards that they're doing beyond what we're asking them to do, because they're very driven people. They're very competitive people. There are people on our staff who clearly must have gotten upset in school if they didn't get an A+ and felt bad about an A, because I had someone come to me and say, I missed a card and I have a 98%. Can I please have my account reset? And it was a legitimate question. They wanted to start over, wipe the slate so that they could have 100% in the system. And it's cute to see that. It's exciting for people to be happy about something that is helping us get better.
Yeah, and learning is happening and they don't even realize it. No, I think they do realize it, but that's great. So thank you so much for sharing that. I get excited because recall was one of the things I got to be directly involved in. So it's something I really enjoy. And I know back in my day in law enforcement, I would have loved to have had something like this for learning for sure. So I want to move in, kind of both Power Ready and Power Recall have integrations with Power Policy. And in fact, Power Ready is, kind of that integration where you can, link a policy and everything. But with Power Recall, it's kind of embedded directly into the system, so it's a little bit different. And then we're going to talk about how you're using your analytics and your dashboards and everything to, make your decisions. So let's first start with how Power Policy integrates with Power Ready and how you can connect those policies to training. So it's really simple to set up. There's a linkage there. And what it lets you do is in your description fields in that DOR that you're doing, you've got those skills and activities and things that you have to complete. It lets you add a description link, or excuse me, in that description, it lets you add a link to the policy so you can directly link policy and training together. And so Dana, you and I talked a little bit about this, and you guys weren't really actively using it, but you have kind of started playing with it. So I'd be interested to hear from you kind of how easy that was, like to kind of look at and figure out maybe, and then how you can see that being an advantage in your program.
Absolutely. Once I became aware of it and I started playing with it a little bit, I was like, oh, I'm going to go in and add it to everything. So my CTOs are going to be overwhelmed by the amount of SOPs they can link to. It is very easy. You can easily copy the links from our Power policy. It's very easy to get the link from there and just paste it in. I mean, I can't even, that's as easy as it is you copy and paste it in. But it really creates a way for your DORs to be perfectly in line with your SOPs, especially if you have had recent policy changes. So we have had a recent major overhaul of one of our dispatch SOPs. And so to be able to link that in for our dispatchers who are still getting familiar with it themselves and having to train on it is perfect because they can easily go right to the SOP and say, okay, I remember that this changed, but what exactly does it say? And so it's a perfect tool to make sure that your CTOs are doing exactly what they're supposed to be, and there's no reason for them to not be looking at it. And then as a trainee, if you see a grade and you're like, why did I get a lower score on that? You also have that ability to go straight to the SOP and brush up on it to make sure that you're doing better moving forward with how your performance is.
Yeah, for sure. And I will say that, with the integration, it actually has kind of a file picker built in. So once that's all set up, you can just click, there's a Power DMS button that's in that description field, and it allows you to go do a file pick and just select that policy. So it's automatically linked with that portion of your DOR skills and tasks and things. So it's really cool. I like it. Clark, I wanted you to talk to us about Power Recall and talk about how that integration with policy. I know you talked to me about this kind of being one of your favorite features about Power Recall is that integration. So tell us a little bit about the integration and how it impacts you.
I think in general, it's one of the better features just because it really helps you cut down on time of actually creating training materials. In general, whether you're making a PowerPoint or a quality improvement bulletin, like a one-pager, obviously you have to have that reference material, but then also you have to kind of think of ways to paraphrase the information, but also keeping true to what the standard is laid out there. Through the integration between policy and Power Recall, it shortens that distance really greatly. And when you get the suggestions for the cards, whether it's you're using the whole document or you're highlighting a suggestion, oftentimes it's pretty spot on with what you're trying to get across and challenge the user enough, but not make it an impossible selection. So again, making sure that they have been reading for content on the policy, but not having you to take as much time or your own kind of brain power to really try to thread that needle. So I think the integration allows you to kind of get through more material faster, but still know that it's going to be a high quality and it's going to be effective at communicating what you want to get across.
Yeah, I think one of the cool features that's built in there that I really like is that the policy is highlighted. So whether you get a question right or wrong, there's an immediate link. It tells you immediately if you got it right or wrong. It tells you what the correct answer is, and then it links to that policy so that you can go in and see that highlighted portion of the policy where that question came from, which just adds to the learning experience there. Bill, anything else that you would like to talk about integration-wise on Ready or Recall that stands out to you?
I think that this was the system that our staff is already in on a daily basis, where they're seeing our policies, where they're signing our policies, and that familiar interface, that same login to do these, whether it's through the web or through the Power DMS mobile app, made it not a challenging rollout for our team.
Awesome. Yeah, I think that is something I have heard from other customers as well. It's just that the way that they're integrated makes it so easy for them because people are so used to it already that especially with Recall, I would say, because it's that same login and it's built on top of that system. I'd like to, just talk about in general what people can experience. So you already have power policy. That's the group that's on this call today. Most of you, if not all of you, have power policy already. You're already a customer, and there may be people that aren't, but we do want to tell you, how you can take this and evolve your training. So you're already doing policy assignments and document management, compliance proofs, all of that in power policy. But just think how you can improve your training program and be more innovative while you're boosting your employees' confidence. And you're also going to be able to ensure that every member is trained for their role. And you'll have the data to prove that what you're doing works. Power Ready is mobile friendly. Power Recall is part of our Power Policy mobile app. So really they can do any of these pieces of software here can be done from any device. And then they work just seamlessly together. So I just think it just makes sense, and you've told us that, but I really want to talk a little bit more. We'll move into like dashboards and analytics, and how you're using that to inform some of your decisions in training. So let's just talk a little bit about the general insights on that next slide. So from a leadership perspective, I know, Bill, that you're using reporting and analytics to help you identify who's engaging, kind of where gaps exist, of what you can do to improve. But can you talk about any specific significant decisions? And Vanessa, if you could go to the next slide. Oh, wait, no, you're there. My bad. You're there. Talk about the significant decisions that have been made possible for you now with having the analytics and the reporting behind Ready and Recall.
Yeah, I talked earlier about having fewer silos in terms of our systems, our information, and being able to use the reporting platform that we have been using for Power DMS to also see now from a continuing education perspective with the Power Recall product, how people are doing has been really helpful, really easy for us to consume because we're familiar with it, and I spoke about that single pane of glass. We are increasingly able to see how we're doing as an agency and drill in either topically or from an employee perspective to identify what more we need to do to get better.
Clark, do you have any specific, dashboards or analytics that you're using on a daily basis that are really helping you?
I think just the leaderboard and kind of seeing the users' engagement overall has been really illuminating to kind of that competitive spirit, and that gamification really can be a successful way to communicate information. And just, yeah, I'm impressed by how frequently the users go way over their suggested allotment of cards for the week. But I think it really speaks to their overall enjoyment of Power Recall and how it has been very effective for us.
Dana, how about you as a training manager with Power Ready and Power Recall? Because I know you probably got access to both dashboards in both systems. How are you using that information and that data for what you do?
We, especially in Power Ready, we run reports on our trainees all the time. We do have a benchmark for release that is a 2.7 average in certain categories. And so to be able to run that report and see exactly where they're falling, there are certain reports that will then link you back to the DORs, and you can see the comments and see how they're doing. So for us, it's a great way to, without having had a conversation yet with the trainer, be able to get an idea of where that performance is. And you can see the progression of where it was. You can run a 20-day report or a 10-day report. So being able to really see the shown improvement of a trainee through that dashboard has been really amazing.
Awesome. I love how you guys are using data to take a great training program and just make it even better. I really want you to share with our audience, any lessons or advice that you have. So you've already got this great program, you've implemented it, you've been using it for a while. So on this next slide, I've put some tips here that you helped provide to me, but Maybe Bill, you could start us off and talk a little bit about these tips as far as if somebody is looking at maybe adding Power Ready or Power Recall or maybe both, what you might tell them or what you might suggest to them.
I think with Power Recall being our most recent experience, what I would recommend is having beta testers within your organization. That was something that we did because it was a beta product, and that's the approach that we took. And if it hadn't been a beta product, I don't know that I would have thought about doing it that way. There's a lot of things that we've rolled out in the past where we roll it out to everyone at once, and it turned out to be really helpful to build champions within the agency for something and some momentum where we had that smaller group doing it and they started to talk with their peers about it, and then people were excited to get on board as we expanded.
All right. Clark or Dana, either one of you have anything to add, like tips that you would share with the audience?
I think kind of in a way to carry that momentum from the beta testing champions is acknowledging and publicly recognizing, however you can, the success stories. And we did that with a particular user who got over 1,000 cards right consecutively, which really speaks to kind of their knowledge base and also their appetite for the training. And with that, they were a newer call taker who had, I think, just eclipsed 1 year. So, you know, seeing that from somebody so new, I think is very encouraging about not only their capacity for the role, but also their appetite to continue to do the best to their ability day in, day out.
Love that. How about you, Dana? Anything from your perspective in training that you would give a tip to our audience about either one of these pieces of software?
Yeah, I don't know if this is a tip or just my love of it is how easy it is to customize it. We have so many different roles, you know, from 311 to 911 to police dispatching. And for us to be able to create separate DORs for each of those different roles and to be able to change it, you know, hourly if we needed, you know, that is something that was a game changer for us so that we're able to really fine tune what we want them to focus on in each of those different classifications. So that was something that was really a way for us to also open that door for communication with our CTOs, and they felt like they have a hand in that process of updating it. But definitely keeping knowing that you can add categories at any time was a big deal for us, because I feel like at any given moment, if we see a gap in that learning process or in, you know, the trainees that hit the floor and we're suddenly saying, okay, we're falling short on this, you can add that category at any time. So always being open to that change in the training program will really help you find that success.
Awesome. I really appreciate everything that you guys have shared with us today. And I love that you're empowering your team to have the knowledge and the confidence to make sure they're prepared for their roles in embracing the technology here. So for the audience, I'd just like you to think about, you know, what's the possibility? What could this look like for you and your team? You've heard Cincinnati ECC and how they've made great strides in bringing their training and policies together into one ecosystem. Think for just a moment about what that could look like for your agency. Imagine new hires that are getting up to speed faster with role-specific onboarding that's structured, trackable, and easy to manage, and easy to change, as Dana said, so if you need to. And then picture your team reinforcing high liability policies through short, targeted training. You're not having to pull people off the floor or off the road and trying to figure out how you're going to scramble schedules to cover everybody. They're doing it in their downtime when they have a moment. And then with your analytics and dashboards, you're having real insights into who's engaging in training, where knowledge gaps are, and how you can keep improving over time. So the opportunity is really here to build a connected, proactive training experience, and it's all within a platform from Power Policy that you already know and trust because they work so well together. So with that, I'd like to take questions. So Vanessa, I'm curious if we have any questions that are coming in from the field here.
Yes. One of the main questions was just in regards to power recall. I know you guys addressed this, I believe, after the question was asked, but just kind of going into the dashboards and how you're able to review, like who's completed the decks or the cards, um, how many they've done, like where the data is and how easily accessible that is. If Clark or Bill would like to dive into that.
Yeah, it's you know, on the power recall portion of power policy, but there's currently I think there's a few different dashboards, but there's ones with leaderboard in terms of cards taken, as well as I forget what it's called exactly in terms of like compliance score, what's the accuracy, you know, how many percentage out of 100 do people have right. Also, you can break that down more by actual individual card decks. So if you have something for just your police protocols or your fire protocols or your medical protocols or whatever, you can narrow it down. There's sliders on the top to change the data, whether you want to view all users, singular users. You can pick this, you know, users on one shift. You can change the dates. So it is pretty flexible to see over either a long or short amount of time the kind of engagement that you're getting currently.
Bill, would you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, there's a heat map. Essentially there's just a lot of ways to slice and dice it to look at either a topic or an individual. If you build out groups maybe for your shifts or different parts of your agencies already in Power DMS, you can leverage those groups for reporting with Power Recall as well.
Yeah, and I think I would add one other thing is you can actually get as granular as an individual card. So if you see an individual card that's not performing well on the heat map, or you know, looking at it as that individual card, that may trigger you to say, well, one, maybe there's a policy issue, or two, maybe there's a question issue, you know, or three, maybe it's a training issue, and maybe we need to add that to an actual bulletin and do a little bit more detailed training on that to cover it. So lots of different ways to get information out of the system to see how everybody's doing and what their level is, and also looking at the actual cards and the information itself to see how it's performing as well. Anything else, Vanessa?
Yeah, we had one other question. When it comes to customizing DORs, they're just asking, how do you address that without following boilerplate APCOs, or how are you developing policy for the deviation?
Dana, you might be the best to speak to that.
So when we are updating our DORs, we're typically just adding in additional categories to more fine-tune things. So we aren't necessarily creating whole new categories. So we found recently that we didn't have a specific way to track our address verification. So we already had policies written about how our address verification should be done, but it was just kind of looped into the general, how are they doing numbers? There wasn't anything very specific. So we were able to add in additional categories for, was it asked the first time? Did they have them verbally verified a second time? So we're adding in categories that we already have policies in place for. If it was something that we didn't have a policy in place for, obviously those two things would have to go hand in hand, and we would have to create and roll out an SOP before adding it in. But typically it's more of the fine tuning within the realm of what we already have in place. So we were able to better track those address verification details. You know, we were having issues with people not checking phase 2, so we added that in. And again, that was already in our policies. So we haven't run into too many issues with our DORs not lining up. It was just kind of us making them better and improving and better lining them up with adding those more granular categories in.
Dana, did you start with a template? Because we have several templates in there, like specifically for communications. I know we have APCO and Nina in there. Did you start with a template and then customize from there, or did you build all of yours from scratch?
I've done it both ways. I do like the onboarding templates just because it's kind of already in there. but there have been a couple. So we have also started using it for our PIPs and our remedial plans, which look very different than like a new hire coming in. So those I like to be able to create more kind of freehand because they don't fit the same molds as what you want to use. So I think it really is specific to what you're building it for. The templates are phenomenal, and to be able to look through, there are so many different options of what you can use. And again, that's one of the things that I love so much about it is it's so customizable. It's so easy to use. And if you get into one and you're like, this is not what I need, you can just start fresh and go back. And you know, that's kind of how I've learned so much about how to create them, is kind of the trial and error situations of, okay, this is I went down the wrong path, let's go back and start over. So it has really given us an opportunity to learn better how to create them.
Thank you so much for that. I think we're running out of time for questions. Mainly, I want to thank all three of you for being here today. I really appreciate you so much. But before we go, I want to talk about what's next. So what's next is everybody that registered for this webinar, whether they attended live or not, is going to get an email with the link in the slides and the recording from today. And so they'll be also be able to download copies. We did case studies with Cincinnati, and so you'll be able to download copies of their Power Ready and their Power Recall case study in case you need that for follow-up. But most of all, again, thank you so much for joining us today, everybody in the audience. And Bill, Clark, Dana, thank you so much for sharing with our team. And I will let you, like Bill, do you have any last closing comments or anything that you would like to share with the team?
We've gotten a lot of help from other agencies, so we'd like to take the opportunity to share what we've done as well. Certainly happy to talk to anyone that reaches out and share lessons learned, because we usually end up learning a whole lot of things in return.
Awesome. Again, thank you so much, everybody. I hope everybody has a great day. Stay safe out there. Bye-bye. Thank you from Power DMS.